Question on 1031 exchange. For example, I sell under a contract for deed with a percentage down and the balance paid in a balloon in 5 years after. Can this sale be exchanged?
First of all, I'll give you the disclaimer that every contract is written differently. There's a lot of different ways to write a contract. I'm going to give you the general answer. When you enter into a contract for deed, someplace they call it a land contract or executory contract, depending on what part of the country you're in, you're effectively conveying equitable title to the buyer. You're giving them possession of the property. They're taking the risk of loss if the property is destroyed. They're typically, the vendee on a contract has to pay the property taxes, the insurance, either directly or indirectly. They're the owner for tax purposes. Think about who takes the depreciation deductions on the property that was purchased on a contract for deed. The vendee does, generally speaking, because they are in possession of the property. They have the rights to utilize the property. When you're a vendor on a contract for deed, you're selling the property with an installment sale. You're retaining the bare legal title as an enforcement mechanism to compel the vendee to make sure they make their monthly payments, or whatever their payments are, to make that balloon payment at the end. You're retaining the bare legal title, but you have effectively given equitable title for tax purposes to the vendee. So you basically sold the farm when you entered into the contract for deed. 5 years from now, when you get paid off on the balloon, you probably cannot do a 1031 when you're merely giving the legal title to the buyer to satisfy the financing arrangement that was your installment sale. So how do you work around this bad fact of having conveyed equitable title? Well, the first option is don't do seller-backed financing. It complicates your exchange. That's not a real good answer, particularly when interest rates rise fast. What you could do, let's say you're selling your duplex for $500,000, the buyer's giving you $100,000 down at closing, and you're financing $400,000 for 5 years. One way to fix this problem is to have the vendee bring their $100,000 in and have Mr. Vendor bring in $400K out of his own pocket. I'm looking at you. Because if you bring in the cash out of your own pocket to loan to the buyer, that means I'll still get the same amount of funds in my exchange account as I normally would get if there wasn't seller-backed financing. So having the exchangor finance the buyer out of pocket is a great way to fix the problem, but that requires you to have some liquidity. In the uptown area, there's a real estate broker that acts as sort of a problem solver for sellers. You want a clean break. You don't want to do seller-backed financing, and you don't want to have to bring capital to the deal. This real estate broker basically interposes himself and says, I'll buy the property, I'll pay cash, and then I'll turn around and sell it to the vendee on a contract for deed. He extracts a concession from you, a substantial price reduction, and extracts a concession from the vendee in charging a higher interest rate. So he wins, but you then get your clean break and you don't have to bring cash to the closing. That might be another way of saying don't do seller-backed financing. There's other variations on this theme where the intermediary could accept the promissory note and hold it in the exchange account together with the $100,000 of cash. There's other ideas that are out there. Potentially, we could even give this seller-backed financing note to the seller of the replacement property as partial payment. We call that an allonge when we transfer the note to the seller. I've done that 3 times in my career. I've always been astonished that sellers would take A financing instrument is partial payment.